Welcome everyone. We appreciate you joining us today for this webinar. I'm Deborah Hill. I'm Vice President at Meer. You'll see a couple of other people on screen here. We have Raj, who's our Director of Customer Success, and Pranya, who's our Director of Implementation. They're joining us today to help us out with some of the logistics of the webinar. So without any further ado, this webinar is brought to you by Meer. We provide software that helps companies like yours comply across the broad spectrum of regulation and compliance issues. This is actually the first of 5 planned seminars. You see up here, we have cybersecurity, anti-money laundering, branch and rep examinations, and firm-wide supervision coming up. To get information about these webinars, please subscribe to our Eventbrite channel or follow us on LinkedIn or email info@Meer to get on our mailing list. Great. So let's talk a little bit about today's agenda. We're going to talk about SEC and FINRA examinations and guidance. Ben will be covering that and we'll introduce him in a moment. Then we will talk about how Chief Compliance Officers can prepare for examinations. Kendra will be leading that discussion. And then Laxmi, who's the founder and CEO of Meer, will be doing a demo of the GRACE system, specifically on how for Reg BI, how we can help you address those compliance issues. And then we'll have time for questions during the last 10 minutes of the presentation. So let's start out with a round of introductions. Each of our panelists will briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll move right into the context. So Ben, let's start out with you.
Sure. And you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. My name is Ben Marzouk, and I'm a partner with Eversheds Sutherland in Washington, D.C. My practice focuses on U.S. federal securities regulation, in particular dealing very closely with registered intermediaries such as broker-dealers and investment advisors, both SEC registered and state registered entities. And so we're very close to issues dealing with SEC rules and regulations, especially the 1934 Securities Exchange Act and also FINRA rules, and have been kind of spending a lot of time with Reg BI, obviously, the topic of today's discussion, and kind of counseling our clients on ways to comply with the new regulation and kind of the new world order when it comes to documenting and making sure that you're operating in compliance with the new SEC regulation for broker dealers. So thanks.
All right. Thank you. Kendra.
Hello, Kendra Cain here. I'm currently Chief Compliance Officer for Arvest Wealth Management. Prior to coming on board at Arvest, I was the CCO for various regional broker-dealers and investment advisors, mostly in the bank channel. Had extensive exposure with regulatory management exams, FINRA, SEC, and state regulators. And just, like Ben said, working with the new rules, the new era of Reg BI, the DOL rule changes, and also SEC's marketing rules. So keeping us busy these days with managing through all the changes and trying to create policies and procedures and keep our firm on track. So thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Great. Thank you. And Laxmi.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Meer and our webinar here. To introduce myself, I have background of about 25 years of financial industry experience, building some very complex systems with the Bombay Stock Exchange, as well as working with Citibank, and of course, now the SVB as well. With the Lamir was created after the 2008 crisis with the view of being able to help manage the whole regulatory obligations through technology. And GRACE is our platform that we offer for banks, for their GRC, broker-dealers, wealth advisors, pensions, as well as institutional investors. It enables the specific, the GRACE system is built for specific regulations as per SEC, FINRA, OCC, and other worldwide regulators.
All right. Great, thank you very much. So now we'll start our presentation portion of the webinar, starting with Ben. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah and Laxmi. And just a heads up to everyone that I'm gonna have to jump after kind of detailing some of the Reg BI developments. So if there's any questions on what I said, feel free to email Laxmi or Deborah. They can give you my contact information, and happy to connect outside of this presentation offline, and we can sort of discuss any questions you might have. But I wanted to provide kind of an update for the group on SEC and FINRA thinking on some of the recent guidance that they've issued in connection with regulation best interest. I think most people on the call, I'm assuming at least, are familiar with what regulation best interest is and what it requires, and how it changed the typical expectation of basic suitability rule under FINRA Rule 2111. So I don't think there's much need to get into the specifics of each one of the 4 component obligations of the regulation. The rule's now been in effect for quite some time. Obviously, this rule predates the pandemic and was kind of adopted in June of 2019. And there was sort of like a 1-year runway period for firms to adopt policies and procedures and draft disclosure documents, such as the Reg BI disclosure document and Form CRS disclosures, until the rule ultimately, was implemented and the compliance date began a year from the adoption in 2020. And so it's been, it's not, it's weird. I still think of it as a new rule in effect, but it's, been, quite a few years, sort of coming on up to 5 years almost, that the rule has been in place. And obviously people that have been following this for a while know that the push towards a higher standard beyond suitability, whether it's a best interest regulation or more commonly referred to as a fiduciary standard for brokers recommending security transactions to their customers, that push has been going on for, really like a dozen years prior to the adoption of Reg BI, really even dating back to a 2007 Circuit Court of Appeals case in the DC Circuit that overturned an earlier attempt to kind of impose a similar standard. And of course, the initiative ultimately does come out of the Dodd-Frank Act, and one of the sort of rulemaking mandates that was allocated to the SEC. So there's a long history here, but we are currently in a land of best interest being the governing standard for how brokers must recommend security transactions or investment strategies to their customers. So since the rule has been in effect, there's been a number of interesting regulatory developments that have slowly expanded on and in some ways enhanced, or maybe even gone beyond the text of the plain language of regulation best interest. Most notably, the SEC, since adopting the rule, and by the way, the number one place to look for terms of guidance and compliance advice for how to implement Reg BI would be the adopting release that the SEC issued. It's hundreds of pages and it's a lot to sort through, but there's a lot of interesting nuggets in there. And there's terms like reasonably available alternatives that you're probably familiar with. That's nowhere in the actual rule. That's just in the rulemaking release that kind of provides the gloss or interpretation on the language that has ultimately been adopted in the rules of the SEC. So that's why the adopting release is always sort of point one that you should begin with in terms of understanding what is required of your firm beyond the plain language of the rule, or when the plain language of the rule may be unclear. Point two, after the adopting release, would be a series of informal staff guidances that the SEC has issued in connection with Reg BI. These have been called staff bulletins, but they're really kind of been structured in FAQ or frequently asked question format. And so they've released, I think, up to 4 or so of these staff bulletins since the adoption of Reg BI. And this is, by the way, even though I call them FAQ guidance, there is also a separate FAQ page listing various questions and there's both a page for Form CRS and a page for Reg BI. That's separate from these staff bulletins. So you want to revisit the actual FAQ page, but these staff bulletins are also kind of framed in terms of the guidance that they issued in a frequently asked question format. But the staff bulletins is something that Gensler's leadership has really rolled out during Clayton. They really kind of came with the traditional, that's where the FAQ page sort of stems from. They've stopped updating that FAQ page, the SEC has, and they've started to issue guidance in the form of these staff bulletins. So that's why I said, like, more recently, that's been the focus of SEC providing gloss on the meaning of Reg BI. And what they've done is, a series of 3 to 4 staff bulletins, the most recent one of which came out just a month ago, April 20th, 2023. And I'd say that was the most, of all the staff bulletins they've issued, it's been the most illuminating because it was the first time, the real first instance of the SEC issuing, some written staff guidance on the topic of reasonably available alternatives and the care obligation. This really, first time they've really issued any written product on this since the adoption of Reg BI. So in this regard, there are some new concepts that they've introduced. The SEC is taking the view that consideration of reasonably available alternatives should begin early in the process of formulating a recommendation or providing advice, rather than a retroactive exercise after the financial professional has already decided what to recommend. So any firm that's relying on surveillance or other retrospective reviews to consider reasonably available alternatives will need to consider possible adjustments in response to this bulletin. And it's what, reasonably available alternatives has been one of the areas of the rule where I think there has been substantial confusion, not only because of the fact that it's not in the rule, right? There's the term, the new consideration, the care obligation that Reg BI was known for, is it finally required the consideration of cost as an element to satisfy the care obligation. Now, what does cost mean? That's the question. Well, the SEC said in the adopted release that in order to consider cost of a recommendation, you need to look at all of the reasonably available alternatives. And they didn't provide much guidance beyond that. So that's why the staff bulletin is helpful. It's really one of the first times they've kind of introduced a concept of reasonably available alternatives. And they also took the view that it's particularly important to document the basis for reasonably available alternatives. And the statement has potential wide implications for how broadly it is worded in the staff bulletin. There's no qualifier on the use of documentation. They say it needs to be documented anytime there's a conflict, without really saying what type of conflicts or how or what conflicts kind of rise to the level of needing documentation. It's a bit tricky because the SEC has said you don't need to document each and every recommendation and the consideration of reasonably available alternatives for each and every recommendation. But in practice, they seem to be saying that they're moving the goalposts further and further towards this idea of really, in practice, you need to document every reasonably available alternatives consideration for every recommendation. They haven't come out and said that, but it seems to be at least a fair interpretation of where their recent written guidance has been headed. And then quickly, just, I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things in the enforcement examination context. FINRA at least has been out front. It's something they mentioned at the FINRA conference that I'll sort of touch on at the end really quick, that, their goal is to have 1,000 examinations of broker-dealer firms. So that's something that continues to be a priority for both the SEC and FINRA. There have been several enforcement actions issued by both the SEC and FINRA. FINRA just came out with one, I think last week or like a week and a half ago, May 12th, on a firm that had a number of Reg BI violations, violating the disclosure obligation, violating the care obligation, ended up expelling the firm and its reps from membership with FINRA. I still have yet to see a case, and this is sort of the million-dollar question, a case that would not be brought under suitability or would not represent a violation of suitability prior to Reg BI. I think that's what everyone's waiting for, a case that, oh, like here's something really unique that they wouldn't have brought if suitability was the only rule on the books. In other words, if we believe that Reg BI enhanced the suitability standard, and there's, you know, some interesting kind of literature on that and whether or not it actually did, based on FINRA's understanding of what suitability was, but you know, there's at least like something to that. You know, if you believe it does, where's a case that would only be brought under the higher standard and not under a suitability? I mean, of course, Reg BI makes it easier to prosecute and go after firms. You know, but yeah, that's you know, that's something that sorry, I thought I saw a chat question or something. Oh no, that's just Deb chatting. Yeah, so yeah, so that's you know, one kind of area that we continue to see kind of the development, I guess, in the enforcement context. And there's going to be more and more actions, but that's the one to keep a lookout for, you know, a case that would not be brought under suitability. And then finally, the FINRA conference was last week. Just wanted to point out a couple things. They obviously, Reg BI was a big focus of discussion. They spent a lot of time, they had a whole standalone Reg BI panel. They talked about complex products. That's something that continues to get a lot of attention from the regulators. They talked about reasonably available alternatives again and the documentation. And there really seems to be, at least judging from the comments from the panelists, a little bit of a split between firms that are documenting recommendations using like handwritten notes from the rep or some kind of like Salesforce CRM system to actually document the recommendation, versus firms that are using more tech-oriented solutions that pull in other alternative investments and kind of run. So those are the inputs, and then it pops out an output of a comparison between those different investment options, especially in the mutual fund context. And it seems to me that FINRA and the SEC really prefer the latter approach. The rep notes on their own ledger really are not going to cut it, it sounds like, if you're dealing with especially with a recommendation of an alternative investment fund or a complex product. And then finally, Gensler gave the keynote. It's come up a few times and the press has written about it in the industry, that, you know, he keeps referring to this concept of Reg BI being a work in progress. Whether that means they're going to amend it, revisit it, enhance it, maybe tweak it further, no one really knows yet, but he's said it enough that it's gotten the industry's attention that the rule's not, I don't want to say, like, there may be some enhancement or evolution to this rule. So just keep an eye out for that. That's it. I'll sort of pause there. If you have any questions about the material, feel free to shoot me an email or contact Deb and they'll sort of get you in touch with me. So I'll sort of turn it over to Kendra or whoever's next.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was excellent. And we can't wait to see the results of some of the questions you're asking there. Kendra, over to you.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, that was great, Ben. Interesting point about not having seen any enforcement that wouldn't have been brought on under the suitability standard. So we'll be on the lookout for that for sure. Well, Laxmi, thanks for having me again. Yeah, so I was asked to cover how we can prepare for these examinations and kind of thinking through it. You know, we're constantly preparing, looking for the guidance that Ben alluded to in bulletins, also monitoring enforcement actions or actions taken against firms and advisors, you know, as it relates to Reg BI, so that we can get a better picture of exactly what they're looking for. And I have a slide here with a few bullet points, and I'll kind of run through them and skip over a little bit. I think Ben covered some things that I was going to hit on also, so I'll try not to be too repetitive. But I'll also be available for any questions, or you can reach out to me directly if you want to chat about it further after the call. But, you know, thinking about preparation for an exam, I would say the first thing is just to be very familiar with the rule itself. It is very lengthy and not all entirely clear, but being familiar with the four major components of the rule, and I won't go into great detail on each one, but just the disclosure obligation, conflicts of interest, compliance obligation, and the care obligation, which seems to get a lot of focus right now, and being familiar with what the requirements are underneath all of those, having a good understanding, since it's such a sweeping rule and the expectations are just raised, with the examiners these days. The other thing is to make sure that you have solid written supervisory procedures that address all the components of the rule, but they actually apply to your firm and they're practical and can be implemented, that they're not just an off the shelf, out of the box set of procedures that are, specific to Reg BI. And being open and flexible whenever things aren't working out. Maybe you've written a policy or procedure that you think is a good idea, but in practice is not really working out. So being flexible to make changes along the way, and in documenting any changes that you make, so that way when the examiners come in, you're able to pinpoint when certain changes were made. I would also suggest being very mindful of supervision and how that's covered in your procedures, and making sure that your supervisory staff is, whether it's your principal review that's reviewing transactions, or your managers that are out there directly responsible for the supervision, that they're well versed in the rule and your firm policies and procedures surrounding it, so that there are no surprises and everyone's on the same page. I've actually seen examiners reach out to those that are supervisors on the principal review desk and asking questions, as to why they felt like a particular recommendation was approved and appropriate and in the client's best interest. So the exams are a little bit different through the Reg BI lens. So just making sure that everybody's prepared and understands what the internal roles and responsibilities are. Initially, when the SEC started their examinations, right when the rule went into effect, and probably a year or so after that, they were really focused on firms' compliance with the disclosure obligations and identifying conflicts of interest and how those are disclosed, and delivery requirements for the form CRS, and documenting that delivery was made, and also that all the conflicts are included in the Reg BI disclosure document, and that those are delivered and documented as well. As time's gone on, it looks like the SEC and FINRA are really more focused on care obligation and our compliance obligation now, and not surprisingly, also concerned about complex products that are sold to retail customers, and a lot of emphasis on reasonably available alternatives, which Ben alluded to earlier, and we had not seen a lot of guidance on that thus far until this recent bulletin last month. But as it relates to reasonably available alternatives, I would look closely as to how your advisors are determining what products might be alternatives for what they're recommending. And like he said, on the front end, not after the fact. And what guidance you're providing to the field and the advisors on how to make the determination of reasonably available alternatives. So we're seeing some firms that are using matrix or grid or technology that's available, which I'm sure we'll be talking about, where, you can identify different available alternatives based on investment objectives, or time horizons, terms, features, cost should be considered, of course. So just making sure that you have solid procedures around that, and lots of training on how to look for those alternatives and how to document them, and make sure that it's tailored for your business type, and how you operate. Also documenting, in the reasonably available alternatives, you don't necessarily have to document every single alternative. Actually, I don't think the rule requires that you document anything, but to be able to prove to the regulators that you have considered these things, I'm sure some documentation would be a best practice. And whether you've discussed those alternatives with the clients, or maybe you've just considered them internally yourself, and why that ultimate recommendation that you made was in their best interest, out of all the options that you could have recommended. Also, I think another thing I'm noticing is the regulators are challenging the advisors and the firms around specific recommendations, looking for evidence or some kind of proof of a review that they understood all the cost associated with it, the different features, terms, even, they're picking apart features of complex products and underlying securities that are associated with them, just making sure that your advisors really understand what they're selling and the underlying indexes, for instance, if it's a complex product and what makes up the entire, all the features of what it is that you're recommending, and that you have a good understanding. And I'm sorry, one second. Okay, sorry about that. I had a chat message too. I think just to kind of sum it up, what I've seen in preparing, I would suggest that you look at your brokerage side of your recommendations through the Reg BI lens. When you're bringing on new products or services, kind of thinking through, okay, what do I need to do to conduct appropriate due diligence, make sure that you're considering, the new training that might be required, any new conflicts of interest that might arise, bringing on a new product suite or different services, and how you're going to disclose those, and whether or not those are material changes to your documents when you do revised disclosures. Revisit your policies and procedures in light of the most recent bulletin. It's important to adhere to all the guidance that's out there. So I think Ben had even said something about, you may have had procedures about a retrospective documentation of available alternatives. So you may need to make modifications there. And I would also suggest continually monitoring your conflicts of interest. So some firms have a conflicts committee, or depending on the size and scope of your firm, maybe you just have regular meetings to review, or periodic meetings to review conflicts, make sure there's no new ones that have popped up, and to make sure that you're mitigating or eliminating those conflicts. And have a really robust training program. If the regulators, examiners are going to come in, they're going to ask for your training, when it was done, what kind of training have you done, particularly around reasonable available alternatives, and what tools and resources, systems you might be using in terms of supervision and documentation. So that was the last thing, just utilizing appropriate tools for your size and type of your firm, and looking into those technology resources that are available that maybe make your sales process and your supervision process easier and more streamlined, because it can get real complicated very quickly when you have a lot of products out there and trying to filter through what maybe would be the most appropriate for our client. And I think that's about it, unless, you have any specific questions right now, but that's I guess what I would do to prepare.
All right, awesome. Well, if you do have questions for Kendra, please use the Q&A feature, which you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just go ahead and type in your question. In a few minutes, we'll get to the Q&A portion, and we'll be happy to ask Kendra all of your questions. At this point, we're going to have a quick poll, which you see up on your screen, so that everyone out there who's attending the webinar, please answer the question, and we'll see where everyone falls on this continuum. All right, and do we have the results? There we go. So 75% say this is highly critical information, 25% that it's really good to have. So awesome. At this moment, we're going to turn it over to Laxmi, and she's going to share Lamir's solution to help us use technology to solve all of the problems and requirements that we just heard about from our previous speakers.
Thank you, Kendra, and thank you, Ben, for bringing all the highlights of what the regulators are looking at from organizations. So Lamir, with our background of coming out of high technology as well as deep functional knowledge, we put together the platform called GRACE, Governance, Risk, and Compliance for the Enterprise. And today what we will do is, share with you some of the details that we have, and also addressing a lot of the requirements, as Kendra and Ben mentioned, for need for books and records. And if you go to any Reg BI conversation, it'll always be about document, and about books and records that you need to produce for examinations. And we here, Lamir, with our technology, we are trying to help enable all of those aspects of what the examiners would like to see. What we offer here is the compliance and conduct risk system, the integrated client management piece for that addresses specifics of the regulation best interest. We offer the trade surveillance that would include the surveillance of the client portfolios as well as personal trade monitoring. We offer the branch and the rep examination system where you can do the gathering of information across branches, across reps, as well as the whole information based on the reps, including their CE credits, their registrations, and other things. The AML, the money laundering, the KYC, and the CDD. Now that we're handling client information, we could also do the AML piece. Along with that, I think one of the other areas, which is one of the areas that regulators are looking for, the cybersecurity and the data privacy aspects, along with vendor risk. So these are the different solutions that we offer to the market. And these are all integrated by design, yet modular by how we can offer them. So, and these are cloud-based, web tablet enabled systems, mobile enabled systems that will help with implementing various aspects of compliance and risk management for your firm at your own pace. So the idea is that you can pick and choose whatever modules you need. And as you grow, you can add more modules without disruption. And I think that is the need that I hear from the market a lot, where people want to implement systems, but they don't want to have many siloed systems and then grapple with the integration challenges later. The next slide, please. Yeah. So like Kendra mentioned, the four, and I'm going into the Reg BI and the specifics of the Reg BI and how we with GRACE solve it. The four key Reg BI expectations: the disclosure, care, conflict, and compliance obligation through one integrated system. And that's what I'm going to show you. The GRACE is a SaaS platform, that is software as a service. And if you look at it from how we offer it in 3 portals. The compliance portal that will help set up the policies and procedures, manage the changes that we need to have, help with establishing the attestation, the training, deliver training. And Kendra alluded to that there's a lot of need for training of various aspects of the products through the reps. And if you can provide an online training, that would kind of come out very handy. The product due diligence part, so any products that need to go on the product shelf of the broker dealer, we have functions for those, and these are all very key compliance functions that we have tried to automate here. The client profiling, what kind of clients we have, then the suitability review, the questionnaire that you need to send to the clients, the account opening KYCs, as well as the client communication, the trade surveillance, and the portfolio reviews, disclosures, and Kendra alluded to that, managing all of the disclosures that you need to share and keeping the latest information so that all of the reps and the advisors pick up the latest reviewed copy of documents instead of, picking up from someplace and then by mistake having violations by sending out the wrong copy, which was not approved by the legal. So we help enable all of those kind of things, as well as getting the filings from the folks, the branch and rep examination, and having an issues management standardized way of managing issues across the board from the compliance point of view. From the rep point of view, we have the advisor rep portal where they can keep track of the CRM, the client management, client information of their clients, their risk profiles, their objectives, and then pick and choose the products that are relevant to that particular client, record and choose the alternates, which is the reasonably available alternates, as well as keep notes on what was why the recommendation was being done, and then share it with the compliance and the client itself through a client portal if you want to enable the client portal. All of this is possible by the rep from their own portal. Similarly, the client portal can help the clients receive those documentations, recommendations, the disclosures, as well as any communications from the compliance, as well as the rep or the advisor, and manage it in a very neat and nice way, including account opening. So a lot of this is in an integrated platform with the 3 portals that can help the organization gather up all of the obligations in one place and be able to prove with their books and records as to the way they are being compliant to Reg BI, as well as all of the regulatory requirements from the examiners. So this is just an example set of how a compliance portal looks. If you look at it, the various functions on the left-hand side show you, the many different functions that compliance folks can do, as well as it's a rights-based system. So what it means is that whoever has the different roles in the organization for compliance, there are maybe specific people for supervision, for trade surveillance, there might be specific people who are entitled to do policies and procedures. So all of those people can be given those rights, and they will be able to have those functions. Not all functions will be with everybody, but if it's a small organization, what it means is that many people would have one person may have many roles, and they may be able to use the functions all in one place. If it's a larger organization, they can be divided based on the roles and responsibilities of the organization. The middle portion is actually the workflow. So GRACE is a workflow-based system. So everything is coming up on your queue, giving you an alert, saying something is there for your review, something is there for your alert that you need to get. So all of this is enabled by the system. And on the right-hand side, if you see every individual in the organization who can also report their request for pre-trade approvals, report their outside business activities, the gifts and political donations, and U4s and all of that stuff. So we are basically helping enable people to use the system as a day-to-day system that will enable compliance through those workflow queues and that oversight. Next, yeah. So if you look at it from the advisor portal point of view, you can do the CRM. You can also look at your own clients and manage those processes, including sharing disclosures, as well as send it for compliance approvals, do the recommendation records. And this is what I'm going to show you in the demo. The client portal is, where the clients can log in and see their own data, so they can see their own recommendation. They can get their form CRL. They can do their account opening. They can also receive the disclosures and acknowledge that they've received the disclosures. On the, they can also report complaints where, and all of this goes into that central source of truth for the organization. Now, if you have that central source of truth, that is where you can help, provide that oversight. You can, quickly dive in and see the data, and also be the single source of truth for regulatory examinations. So you don't have to start building it out all over again. And so we become that central source of truth for the organization, for not only their analytics about the organization, but also the examination process. It is also an efficiency tool. If you think about it, the whole organization works with efficiency by enabling all the different parties, the compliance portal, the rep and the advisors, to work through a simple interface where everybody becomes compliant. So from a technology point of view, what we the whole system is built for integrated compliance enabled client management, and we offer it on an SOC2 platform, secure, scalable, with assurance. It's ready to go with all the functions you need. It works for any size of the firm. It also is integrated by design, as I mentioned to you, so that you can scale and grow as you grow. And there's a lot of automation behind it, which allows for automated data loads and red flagging, I think, which is kind of a very important function that, it will reduce the work of the compliance officer, not to have to go and look for, needle in the haystack situation. The data loads and integrations we offer with many of the industry vendors, including all of the brokerages, with Morningstar as well, and, many other vendors. And we have, our solution is built on Oracle. So for us to add any more integrations, whether it's through the internal systems or internal Excel files, it's very easy to do that. And like I mentioned to you, you can add users, clients, employees, and scale to as much as you want to grow. And this becomes a very competitively advantaged tool for you to grow your business without being, hurdled by the technology itself. The architecture is built for easy customization. So any things that you need to have additional to what we already offer is not very expensive. And it also provides that easy collaboration, not only just for your internal folks, but also maybe with respect to legal, outsource compliance, any of the other service providers that you need to have. The dashboards come with real actionable information, so you can kind of run through it as quickly as you want, and you have that information without having to search for information for oversight. So today's GRACE demo will cover the policies and procedures, the training and attestation, the product shelf creation, client risk profile. And one of the things, Kendra, maybe you would agree on it, is that what the regulators are also looking for is to see that the products that are being suggested is in line with what the client's risk profile is. And so we keep track of that as well. And then the products and the reasonably available alternatives, suitability review, the trades in the portfolio review, the disclosures management. And this is what I'm going to show you today. So, Prana, if you don't mind, if you can, give me so I can show the system. I hope everybody is able to see the screens. Deb, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is GRACE. This is on our hosted platform, which is on Oracle and safe and secure. So I'm going to start with 3 different profiles. One of which is, like I mentioned in the presentation, we have 3 portals that I've set up. One is the compliance portal, which is what the day in life of Mike. Mike is compliance officer and how he manages his day through a central policies and procedures repository. So I've just set up some examples here on how you can add a policy. You can add your policy. You can also modify your policy. You can change the update the policy. Like Kendra was saying, the same policy will need a lot of changes that over a period of time, and who the owner of that policy is it for which business entity, what is the regulation that it's addressing. So you basically can build out a full repository of all your policies and simply throw your policy in, and that will become your repository. And this is all within that Oracle, so it's not kind of something that can be tampered with or changed at all. And this is a standard workflow that we talk about. So as soon as you finish updating your policy, if you see there's also versions that are kept. If you see the new versions can be kept, the drafts can be kept. And this is, in this particular case, policies and procedures are only enabled for Mike. So other users are not going to be able to do it, or whoever is in the policy procedure group is the one who can do it. They can send it for review in a very easy way. You can pick and choose who you want the document to be reviewed by. And every copy, every draft, every version of those reviewed documents are available. So when it comes to the regulator, why those changes were done. And when it comes to people, they will get an alert saying those policies are out for review, and it will come up in their queue and they can pick it up. So in this particular case, Mike has some few policy documents for review, and he can pick it up and say, I can download the document, and then he can say, these are my comments. And he can add comments to it. So there are other people who are also sent to review, and he can also see what they have received as their comments, or who are, if their other comments are there, and he can put in his comments saying, I think this section needs to be changed, and this is my draft version, and I think these are the language changes that we should have in this policy document. So this is kind of the standard workflow, and the owner of the policy document can see those changes until he's and then go through those changes for many iterations till they can they can send reminders. They can also say release the policy when everything is done. So that becomes a policy document for the organization to use for all times. And similarly, with respect to procedures, you can have all of your procedures in the and then they tie up against which policy. So it is, what is the policy against which this procedure is being written. So all the documentation needed is all in one place. And again, it's a very simple way of including, managing the policies and procedures that make it very easy for the organization to use. The other big thing that, Kendra also mentioned was the teaching and the training of the people. And here you can set up various templates. You can add any template that you want. You can create, language, legal language about what you think, all the reps need to know, or all the advisors need to know, or your branch staff needs to know. And you can then send it out to folks to say who are all the people who need to attest on this, and they can just, it's a group of people. You can just, send them out the whole thing in an email, and you can just pick what you need and who are the people who need to kind of attest on these, and they will get an alert email to say this is to be attested, and it'll come up again on their queue. So we kind of try to make it as easy as possible for people to attest. And if you look at it from a simple user perspective, I'm just going to go show you an end user who can then attest on her own. She can just log in, and it's in her queue, and she can say I attest. And it's a very simple way of achieving what we want. You should be reporting your outside business activity. Yes, I will do it. So this kind of thing makes it very easy for folks to do their job and at their own desk. So this is the way I think we can achieve the goal of helping the organization manage the process. And from a Mike perspective, he can see on the dashboard, what are the attestations that were done, who has not done it, and the whole data sets are available with the dashboard saying that, yeah, I know that these people have not done, and he can also send out reminders to say, hey, this needs to be done now, and by what date and stuff like that. So basically, it allows the organization to do the same. And similarly, with respect to training, what we have is online training that we can hook up to the material, and you can create a calendar of training for folks and say who are all the people who need to be trained. You can create user groups, and when we add the user group, you can say, hey, all these people who are in this group need to be trained. And what it means is that all those people will be listed out here, and they will get an alert for training. And if you look at it, and then you can also set up the training material through a Moodle type platforms, a learning management platform, and we can hook it up onto their training. And this is an example, in the interest of time. So here's an example of Consumer Privacy Act or regulation best interest training. And so this fluid training material can be created and added into the system. And again, with respect to the training dashboard, who are all the people who got trained, who haven't been trained, what training was conducted with the organization. So it kind of leaves you a full trail of how you can manage the organization with all of its obligations needed. Similarly, with respect to disclosures, so we can keep track of all of the disclosures, and Kendra alluded to that. So it's keeping a way of managing the release version of it in a correct way. So it also includes what are the conflicts that we need to include in this, what are the disciplinary histories if we need to mention it, and then again send it for review, have it reviewed by the right folks, and have the release version. So then the rep or the advisor can pick up the latest reviewed released version. Now I'm going to go off to the client management side of things. Now Nancy's a client management person. She could be a rep or an advisor. And how, I need to go to the product governance piece. So Jeff is another person I've set up here as a user who manages product governance. And if you see how seamlessly the system works, so here is, the product shelf that we can help you manage. And here is all the products. So basically all the available products that you're offering to the market will be in this repository. And you can manage those products by adding new products or changing or really removing various products. It could be, and the product characteristics are very important. So it could be, mutual funds, annuities, ETFs. So if you look at it from an annuity point of view, this is the product shelf in the system. For this particular brokerage firm. And what it means is that, including the characteristics of those products, what is the risk level? If it's an annuities, what are the, which is the rating? What is the rating? What are the fees? What are the charges? Which means that if it was a mutual fund, then it would be the mutual fund characteristics. And so at each product level, we can bring in the characteristics. So this is a Morningstar rating 5. These are the fees, so the share class. So all this data can be managed on the system. And what it means is that you can then remove, change, and this is the data that will be available to the rep or the advisor. What Kendra alluded to as, well, how do you manage, make sure that they get the right information about the details of the product, and the characteristics of the product can be managed through the product governance setup. What it also includes is the client risk profile gathering information. So you can create various client profile questionnaires, and for various clients of yours, that would mean that you can basically ask different questions for different types of clients, and also set up some parameters to understand what their clients' choices are. So this is the high net worth client. Are they in this particular range? If they are high risk, then we know that they are high risk. What is the amount of money we are managing for them? And we can create a risk score with respect to the risk profile. So that is the and then in the product governance side, we can also bucket, into various things. So basically, if you can create, these are just buckets I've created. So with respect to a defensive capital client, what are the kind of products we should be offering? And this comes out of that product governance data set, where you can pick and choose and say, for this particular type of client, these are the kind of products we should offer. And we provide this as the guidance for the rep to pick up. And so now I'm going off to the, to the rep, or the client management person, and how she will use it to help manage her client day to day with the client. So if you look at it, now it's Nancy. She also has her own compliance obligations that she can do, but and then her training and attestation and other things. But she can primarily do her client management piece, where you have the CRM along. She can all the call notes and the discussions. But more primarily, she would. This is each client and the information that she can gather on that client. It includes all the contacts, the call notes, the the household information, the financial information, what are the client's goals. And this, I think, are very important to have as a profile of the client. So they were interested in income, and they are having funding needs for their daughter's college education. Their preferences are they would like to go into clean tech, or not gun stocks, whatever, so, or non-cannabis stocks. However, they decide that that is what they want. And then from a risk profile point of view, Nancy can just use those questionnaires and gather that information, saying, hey, their economic profile, they are part-time employed, they are they have 2 million in the bank, and so all of the questionnaires, including economic profile, their own understanding of complex products. So you can basically, their liquidity requirements. It's very important to gather this information. So you, for a client profiles, you have the understanding of what the client's profile is, and then pull the portfolio of products that you want to suggest. So when it comes to creating that, Nancy can then pick up and say, hey, they have asked us to give them a clean tech portfolio, but they have certain objectives and goals in mind. So if you look at it, the goals are all here. So these were their goals. There were preferences. There was investment goals, and this is what I think will help them decide what is the right product for them. But given the fact that they belong to certain buckets of categories, they can then pick and choose, what are the products that they can give them. And here they can search, by, annuities, product, equity, mutual fund, and they also what Morningstar rating it is, and, what kind of fees, and then what kind of expenses. They can search through that list that was created by the compliance to pick and choose those products. So this is how you choose from and then when you add a product into it, you get to see all of the information, and then you also say, this is I'm putting in $10,000, and this is how we kind of start creating this portfolio. And within that portfolio, you also have the individual products. And that's where you can see when you're including those data sets, you also keep notes saying, why am I suggesting these products, and what are the alternates? So you basically can pick the alternates and add new alternates to this and say, these are the alternates I'm choosing. And with each alternate also, you can keep track of the notes, which also means that, when you look at it, so you can add the alternates, you can do comparisons against, between the primary and the other alternates. What are the alternates available to them? And you can see side by side, what is the data that of each of these alternates that were chosen. Now, the advantage of also all this is that you can now send this same data in a PDF format, or you can, so we just have, pulled it up earlier, so you can see, the PDF format. You can send it out to the client as a PDF, or you can then send it to the client if they wanted to be on the client portal. You can send it to the client. You can send it for suitability review to your compliance officer. So I'm going to show you how the client can view it. And so this is the client portal that I mentioned. So clients can then see their own information on their client portal. They can say, this was what was planned for me. This is my data set, and this is what I think. I don't like it, so or I like it. They can see the same comparisons, and then they can say, no, I think I don't like this idea. I want a different one. And so you can record their comments as well, into the system. And this becomes your book and record on every recommendation that you did. You can share, like I said, you can share disclosures with them, and the disclosures, they can say, yeah, I saw this, I read it, acknowledge it. So in many ways, this becomes their day in life, where they can then, and if once the trading starts and they have holdings and trades, and so they can get to see their current portfolio as a live system. And if for an account opening form, they can also, if the form can also be sent to them, they can then record their information. So it becomes an enablement of the client through the system. They can also kind of record their complaints and other things as the day goes on with respect to the client. Now I'm going back to Jeff and going through the suitability queue, which the rep had sent, Nancy has sent to him. If you see, Jeff is seeing Dr. Smith in the suitability queue. They can then Jeff can then see the same client information, every piece of information, the financial information, the account holders, all of this. And before employee information investment objectives, so the compliance officer knows exactly what is the product being suggested, why is it being suggested, what is their client's data set that and then they can then do the review. Again, at the individual product level, they get the same information, and then they can say, I think for this profile, this is not a good idea. We should not. Client said. So if you see both the records from the rep note as well as the client note is here, and then they can say, I don't think this is right for them. We should not give this to it. So it kind of can bring that whole books and records for every interaction of recommendation in one place. So with that, I'm going to kind of also go into the the dashboard as to see how the dashboard brings it all together now, because I've given Jeff the rights to see the dashboard. So they can say, how many clients or what type do we have? What are the, AUMs, age groups? So, in that single source of truth, you're able to bring together all of the information needed without having to do any more data gathering or pulling. So what kind of account types, everything is available. Similarly, what are the suitability reports? How many people have been, suitability? What is the pending status? What is the product usage, number of clients, which clients are using what products, so what are the concentrations of product usages. Also, before we go there, we can also look at the trade part of the story. We can bring in the trade monitoring data sets for each client by automation to the brokerage systems, and you can set up certain trade rules to bring the the red flag. So how do you red flag those things? You can say, give me any data that says anybody having more than 5% concentration on a product, or all of that kind of data sets. You can set up those parameters, and you can bring and monitor the trades. What it also means is that when the data is brought in from the trade files on an automated basis, they're already red flagged. So if you look at the information, you have the red already saying that, hey, for Dr. Smith family, we saw that there was an issue type of greater than 5% account drop. And then if they wanted to drill down on the data sets, here you can see, hey, Dr. Smith family, these were the accounts, and the money was dropped here. So which could be a sense of a senior citizen violation, where suddenly you see account values drop, or current holdings, there's too much concentration on one thing. So all of this information is available through this automated data load, automated red flagging. So whether it's transactions or holdings, so you can basically see, this was a large value transaction on a day, and then look at all the data sets to say who did it and what happened here. So you can so it makes it easy for the compliance officer to kind of manage all of this. if you look at, I'm not going through the rep examination part, but from in the dashboard set, you can say who are all the reps, what are their clients, who are the people. So in California, you have Tara Turner, and she's look at their licenses, look at their filings, look at the social media, and then look at all of her information as well, and then look at the data from excessive commission and other bases. So for example, you can bring in the data on excessive commission, who are the investors that are her data sets, and is there any violations. So you can, all of them are red flag. So this is the power of GRACE in its ability to pull together all of this information into the single source of truth, and then make it available to compliance to see. So it is an enablement tool for both compliance as well as for the people who are managing clients, to have that ability to be trained, be taught, be given the right products to sell with all the different with all the characteristics, and build that transparency with the client. I hope this demo was useful to you, and definitely happy to have your feedback and enhance the system to to meet the regulatory requirements, as well as how you would like to use it.
Okay. Laxmi, thank you so much. Just a reminder to our attendees, you can use the Q&A function if you have any questions for either Kendra or Laxmi. If you have a question for Ben, please email it to us, and we'll make sure that he gets it so he can respond to you. At this time, we don't have any questions, so I will give everyone 1 more minute to enter any questions that they have so we can address them. And while we're waiting to see if there's any last questions, I just want to thank everyone on our panel and also all of our attendees for joining us today. It's been great to interact with all of you and to hear all of these great updates on the regulatory and compliance environment. So thank you very much. We don't have any questions. If you think of anything after the fact and you would like to reach out, we will provide those emails to you in a follow-up email. So with that,
I want to put the slide on the emails for everybody so that they can reach out to us. Yeah,
Thank you.
we are. Great.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Kendra, and thank you, Ben, for your very valuable suggestions and details on the market. And thank you, everyone, for taking part in this webinar. I hope you found it useful, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, great. Thank you.